Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Code Canvas. In this video, we are going to see an overview of Node.js microservices. We will go through 7 points: microservices overview, monolithic versus microservices in Node.js, why microservices being used in Node.js, frameworks for building microservices in Node.js, microservices architecture in Node, how multiple services communicate through HTTP API, and last is connecting to the database. So, what is microservices in general? Microservices is an architectural approach to building software applications that has gained significant popularity in recent years. So, this is an approach, architectural approach. How you build your applications, it can be a mobile application or web application. It is a method of designing and deploying applications as a collection of small, independently deployable services, each responsible for a specific business capability. So, it is an approach, a method to design and deploy the applications. Okay, these services communicate with each other through well-defined APIs, that is, application programming interface, and it can be developed, deployed, and scaled independently. So basically, microservices is a collection of independent services. Okay, so let's see overview of microservices. So when you see, when you check, or when you go to microservices in any language, these are the main points that can be included. Service independence. So what is service independence? In a microservices architecture, each service is a self-contained unit with its own database and business logic. This independence allows development teams to work on and deploy services without impacting the other parts of the applications. So that is called service independence. Second point is decentralized data management. Each microservice typically has its own database, which means that the data storage is also decentralized. This can be very useful and more flexible and scalable system, but it requires careful consideration of data consistency and synchronization. Third point is service communication. So microservices communicate with each other through well-defined APIs. Okay, so typically we can use lightweight protocols like HTTP or REST, or sometimes we can use messaging system like RabbitMQ or Kafka. Okay, so that's an overview of service communication. Fourth point is scalability. So microservices can be scaled independently based on the specific service demand, and it will allow for efficient resource utilization. Okay, so what does it mean? This means that you can allocate more resource to critical service and fewer resources to less critical ones. Okay, this is very useful feature. Next one is technology diversity. So each microservice can use the technology stack that best suits its specific requirements. So this allows for flexibility in technology choices, and it will encourage innovation with development teams. Next one is continuous deployment. You can say CD. Microservices are typically small and focused, which makes it easier to adopt continuous integration and continuous deployment. Sometimes it is referred as CI/CD, and it's a practice. And this can lead us to faster development cycle and quicker feature delivery. Okay, the next one is resilience. So, in a well-designed microservices architecture, failures in one service should not bring down the entire application, right? So redundancy or failover mechanism and graceful degradation are the key to building these microservices. Okay, the next one is complexity management. While microservices can simplify certain aspect of development, they can also introduce complexity, especially in terms of service coordination or versioning or monitoring. So effective tooling and best practices are very essential to manage this complexity. The next point is DevOps culture. So microservices are often associated with DevOps practices where development and operation teams collaborate closely to automate deployment or monitoring application health and to respond issues quickly. The next one is service discovery. So what is service discovery? To manage the dynamic nature of the microservices, tools for service discovery are crucial. Okay, so this is service discovery. The next one is security, which is very important. Security in a microservice architecture requires careful consideration, including authentication, which is very common, authorization, and data protection, as the attack surface can be larger due to the increased number of services. So, security is very important point here. And the last one is monitoring and observability. So, comprehensive monitoring tools are essential for understanding the health and performance of each microservice and the entire application. Okay, so this was the quick overview of microservices. So now we will see monolithic versus microservices in Node.js. So what is monolithic and microservices? So both are opposite. When comparing monolithic and microservice architecture in the context of Node.js, it's very important to consider the strength and weakness of each approach and how they align with your specific project requirements and constraints. Okay, so let's see the comparison between these two approaches. So when you see monolithic architecture in Node.js, which is very popular, and the first point is simplicity. So monolithic applications are typically simple or simpler to develop and deploy because they consist of single code base and database, right? And it will also consist of single deployment unit. The second point is in monolithic architecture in Node.js specific, it is performance. So monolithic applications can be highly optimized for performance since they have a low latency communication between components and direct database accesses. Third point is development speed. So rapid development is often easier in a monolithic architecture because developers work within a single code base or single database, and it will reduce the need of complex inter-service communication. Fourth point is debugging and testing. So debugging and testing can be easier in a monolithic application because the entire application runs in one process, making it simpler to trace the issues and bugs. The last point is deployment and scaling. So monolithic applications can be easier to deploy and scale horizontally because there is only one application to manage. And in contrast to this monolithic, we have microservices architecture in Node.js. The main point is scalability. Microservices can scale independently and it will allow you to allocate resources to specific service that need them the most. Okay, so this can be a significant advantage in handling variable workloads. Second point is technology diversity. So microservices enable you to choose different technologies and programming languages for each service. So you are not limited to any single backend or any single language, programming language. And this can be useful for using the right tool for each job or each service. Next point is isolation. Each microservice is isolated, meaning that a failure in one service doesn't necessarily bring down the entire application. This can lead to increase the your trust in your application. Okay. The fourth point is team independence. Microservices often align well with independent development teams, as each team can own and manage one or more microservices, leading the faster development cycles, which is not possible in monolithic architecture. And the last one is continuous development, deployment, not development. Microservices can be deployed and updated independently, which can be used or it is very useful in rapid features delivery through CI/CD pipelines. So that is a main advantage in microservices. Okay, so there are few considerations that you need to consider while deciding if you want to go through monolithic approach or microservices. So first one is complexity. Microservices architectures can be more complex than monolithic architecture due to the need of inter-service communication, service discovery. Okay, so complexity is the consideration while you choose any of the approach. The next one is operational overhead. So managing a fleet of microservices can be operationally challenging sometimes, requiring robust DevOps practices and tools. So that is an operational overhead. Third point is latency. In microservices, inter-service communication can introduce latency compared to direct function calls in a monolithic application. So this is very important consideration. And the last point is data management. In microservices, managing data consistency and synchronization across multiple services can be more complex than in a monolithic database. So when you have to choose between these two, there are in a simple words, you can say the choice between monolithic and microservice architecture in Node.js or any other technology stack depends on your project specific needs. Monolithic architectures are often a good choice for small to medium sized projects where simplicity and quick development are essential. Microservices, in contrast, are well suited for larger, more complex projects with the diverse technology requirements and scalability needs. So it totally depends on your needs, right? So you need to consider these 4 points. Let's see, the next point is why we need microservices in Node.js. So first point is scalability, which we already discussed that it is very Node.js is known for its non-blocking, event-driven architecture, and it is making it suitable for building highly scalable applications. So in a microservice architecture, you can take the advantage of Node.js scalability to scale individual services independently based on their specific needs. Second one is performance. So Node.js single-threaded, event-driven model can provide excellent performance for input-output bound operations. Sometimes it is referred as I/O operations, which are common in microservice architecture when services communicate with database or external APIs or any other services. Third point is developer productivity. Node.js JavaScript based stack is familiar to many developers, right? Which can lead to increased developer productivity. This familiarity can be especially beneficial when you have multiple development teams working on different microservices. Next one is quick development or yeah, development. Node.js lightweight and fast runtime environment can enable rapid development and iteration of microservices. So that is a very good advantage. The next one is community and ecosystem. So sometimes when you are stuck at some place, you might need help. So Node.js has a vibrant and active open source community with a rich ecosystem of libraries and frameworks that can simplify various aspects of microservices development. Okay, so this is the one benefit. Flexibility. Node.js does not opinionated about architectural patterns. So it is giving you the flexibility to design and implement microservices in a way that aligns your project's requirements. So it totally depends on you how you want to implement. Next one is containerization. So Node.js application can be easily containerized using technologies like Docker, which is very popular nowadays, making it straightforward to package and deploy microservices in a container like Kubernetes. The next one is event-driven communication. Node.js event-driven communication nature aligned with the microservice pattern of communication through message and events. So you can use libraries like RabbitMQ or Kafka to implement event-driven communication between microservices. The next point is isolation. Microservices in Node.js can be isolated from each other, which means that a failure in one service is less likely to bring down the entire application. So we already discussed this. And the next is CI/CD, that is continuous integration, continuous deployment. Node.js fast startup times and support for modern CI/CD pipeline can be facilitated rapid testing and deployment and updates for microservices. Okay, so this is the main reasons why you should use microservices in Node.js. So there are few frameworks available for building microservices in Node.js. So there are several frameworks and libraries available for building the microservices, particularly in Node.js. And this framework provide various tools and features to simplify the development and management of microservices. So here are few microservices frameworks. Express.js. So it is a very straightforward and easiest web application framework for Node.js, and it can be extended to build the microservices as well. Okay. Next one is Nest.js. So it is a full featured framework for building scalable and maintainable server side applications. The next one is Happy.js. So Happy.js is a powerful, flexible framework for building the applications and services. So it's a well known for its configuration driven approach and extensibility. The next one is Micro. So Micro is a microservices toolkit for Node.js that focuses on simplicity and minimalism. So you will get a minimum code with this library or framework. The next one is Seneca. So Seneca is a microservice framework and specialized in providing a plugin-based centralized microservice architecture. The next one is Molecular. So Molecular is a fast and efficient microservice framework that offers features like service discovery and load balancing and fault tolerance out of the box. So you can consider that as well. The next one is Loopback. So Loopback is a highly extensible Node.js framework for building API in particular and microservices. Next one is Restify. So Restify is a framework specially designed for building RESTful APIs. So you can consider this when you have to implement RESTful APIs in microservices using Node.js. And next one is Fastify. So as this name suggests, Fastify is a web development framework known for its speed and low overhead. And the next one is Adonis.js. So Adonis.js is a full stack web framework for Node.js that provides the features for building APIs as well as microservices. Okay, so let's see the overview of microservices architecture in Node.js. So microservices architecture in Node.js involves designing and implementing a distributed system of small, independently deployable services and each running on Node.js to fulfill the specific business capabilities. So this approach leverages the strength of Node.js, of course, such as its non-blocking, event-driven architecture. Okay, so first one is define service boundaries. So it will identify the various business capabilities of your application and define clear service boundaries. Select a Node.js framework. So you have to choose a Node.js framework or library to build your microservices. Examples are Express.js or Nest.js. We already gone through. Third one is development. So develop each microservice independently. Ensure that each service has its own code base, dependencies, and database if required. The next point is API design. So you need to define clear and consistent API for your microservices. So RESTful API using JSON or GraphQL are common. The next one is communication between microservices. So you need to decide on a communication mechanism between microservices. You can use Kafka or RabbitMQ or HTTP REST API as well. The next one is service discovery. Implement service discovery mechanism to allow microservice to locate and communicate with each other dynamically. Okay. Next one is containerization. Containerization. So each microservice using you can containerize each microservice using Docker. So Docker is one of the very popular uh, containerization in nowadays. So Docker containers provide consistency and isolation, and it will make it easier to deploy and manage the microservices. The next one is load balancing. So you need to implement load balancing to distribute incoming requests evenly among multiple instances of a service. So this is very important point when you create microservices in Node.js. Security, we already gone through security. Monitoring and observability. So you need to set up a comprehensive monitoring and observability solution to track the health, the performance, and logs of your microservices. The next one is testing. So you need to write unit testing, integration testing, and end-to-end test for each microservice that will ensure the reliability and correctness. Okay, you can use tools like Jest, GEST, Mocha, and Postman can be very useful. CI/CD, we already gone through the implementation of continuous integration and continuous deployment. You need to configure that CI/CD with your microservices in Node.js. The scaling we already gone through, error handling and resilience. So you have to implement error handling mechanism very delicately in your Node.js because it is very useful when you have bugs and you need to track down those bugs. So error handling is crucial. Documentation. So you need to document each microservices API dependencies and deployment instruction to facilitate collaboration among development teams and operation teams. That is very important. And team organization. So you have to organize development teams around individual microservices to promote the ownership, the autonomy, and the rapid development cycles. The last one is testing in production. So you have to implement feature flags and testing to safely test new features or change in production without impacting all users. Okay, so how multiple service communicate through HTTP API? So when multiple services in a microservice architecture need to communicate with each other through HTTP API, they do so by making HTTP requests to one other's exposed endpoints. So you need to define API and endpoints. HTTP request method, you can use get, post, put, or delete. You can also use headers and body. So service can include headers in their HTTP request to convey metadata or authentication information, and the request body in sometimes or most of the times that is in JSON format can carry data needed for the operation being performed on the server. The next one is client. So client is whatever client that application is using. The server. So the server, upon receiving the HTTP request, processes it based on the endpoint and method specified. So it is the response. So the server generates an HTTP response, which includes a status code, headers, and response body. Security. So security is very crucial that you have to ensure that HTTP communication between services is secure. You can use the HTTPS to encrypt data, and you can also implement authentication mechanism. Documentation, testing, those are very common when you communicate through HTTP API, and monitoring and logging, and also handling the errors. Okay, so next one is connecting to the database. So connecting to the database in Node.js microservice involves establishing a connection to a database server from your microservice code. So there are few points you can keep in your mind while choosing the database. So you need to first choose the database, like which type of database you are going to integrate. Okay, you need to use you need to also install the database driver. You need to configure database connection. Let's say you are using MySQL, that you need MySQL database driver as well from your for your database connection. Okay, So you need to establish a database connection. You can also execute database queries, select, insert, update, and so and so. So in Node.js microservice architecture, there are many database connection types that you can use, and it depends on your specific requirement. And the first one is direct database connection. So what is this? In this approach, each microservice established a direct connection to its associated database. This is the simplest method and it is suitable for smaller applications. Next one is connection pooling. So connection pooling is a technique where a pool of database connection is created and managed by a connection pool library. So microservices can request and release connection from the pool as required, and it will reduce the overhead of establishing a connection for every request. So this is for connection pooling. Next one is ORM, that is object relational mapping. So ORMs are like type ORM can be used to abstract the database connection and provide an object-oriented interface for interacting with the database. So ORMs are particularly useful when dealing with relational database as they simplify database operation and provide a high-level abstraction. The next one is MySQL. So NoSQL. So NoSQL database connection is sometimes when working with NoSQL database like MongoDB, you can use a dedicated Node.js driver or library such as MongoDB for Cassandra driver for Apache Cassandra. The next one is cache-based connection. So sometimes you can, some cases, microservices might use a caching layer, and in that case you can implement this cache based connection. Okay, so next one is database as a service. So database providers like Amazon RDS, Azure SQL database, or Google Cloud SQL offers the managed database services. So microservices can connect to these databases using the respective providers API or client libraries. Next one is message queue and event driver connection. So microservices can communicate with each other indirectly through message queues or publish subscribe system like RabbitMQ, Apache Kafka, or AWS SQS. So that is another option. Next one is GraphQL. So if you are using GraphQL database like Hasura or Apollo server with the GraphQL API layer, your microservices can connect to the GraphQL API to perform database operations, insert, update, and delete. The next one is federated database connection. So in a distributed database setup, when data is distributed across multiple databases or data centers, microservices might use federation techniques to access data across these distributed sources. And the last one is serverless and cloud functional functions connection. So in serverless architecture, microservices can be implemented as a serverless functions. The examples are AWS Lambda or Azure functions. These functions can establish connections to database using environment variable or secrets provided by the serverless platform. So the choice of your database connection type depends on various factors, including the type of database, the specific use case, performance requirement, scalability needs, and the architecture of your microservice system. So this was for connecting the database. Okay, guys. So this was the overview of microservices in Node.js, and we discussed today few of the points which you can consider while deciding the architecture for your Node.js application. Hope you like this video, and if you are new to my channel, please subscribe to my channel. If you have few queries, you can leave your comments below, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you next time around. Bye.